The courtroom doors swing open with a confidence that immediately draws every eye in Providence Municipal Court. She enters like someone accustomed to being noticed, her designer heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor with a rhythm that speaks of privilege and certainty. Her navy blazer is perfectly tailored, her blonde hair swept back in a style that probably costs more than most people in this room make in a week. Behind her walks an older gentleman in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase that gleams under the fluorescent lights. Judge Frank Caprio looks up from the file in front of him, his reading glasses perched on his nose, his expression as warm and welcoming as it always is. He's seen thousands of people stand before this bench over his decades on the municipal court, and he greets each one with the same gentle dignity, whether they're wearing torn jeans or $1,000 suits. "Good morning," he says, his Rhode Island accent softening the words. "Please step forward." The young woman approaches the podium with her head held high, and the man in the suit positions himself slightly behind her, a protective stance that suggests he's done this before. The clerk reads the case number and the charge: parking violations, multiple unpaid tickets spanning several months, accumulated fines totaling nearly $1,500. Judge Caprio glances at the file, then back at the defendant. "Your name is Victoria Ashford?" he asks, his tone conversational, not accusatory. "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice is crisp, controlled, with the kind of diction that comes from expensive schools and conscious cultivation. "And you're here about parking tickets?" He says it simply, stating the obvious, the way he always does to start these conversations. There's no judgment in his voice, just acknowledgement. "I am, Your Honor, but I need to explain that there's been a significant misunderstanding." She gestures toward the man beside her. "This is my attorney, Mr. Pemberton." The lawyer steps forward slightly. "Your Honor, if I may." Judge Caprio raises a gentle hand, not dismissively, but with the kind of practiced patience that comes from years of managing courtrooms. "In a moment. I'd like to hear from Miss Ashford first." He looks back at Victoria with those kind, searching eyes that have a way of seeing past whatever armor people bring into this room. "Talk to me. What happened here?" Victoria straightens her shoulders, and there's something in that movement, a readiness, a preparation for confrontation. "Your Honor, I believe there's been a procedural error. These citations were issued in areas where my family has long-standing arrangements. My father is Senator Richard Ashford, and—" "Senator Ashford," Judge Caprio repeats, nodding slowly. He's not impressed or intimidated, just processing information. "Okay. And these parking tickets were issued where?" "Outside the federal building, mostly. And two near the State House." Her tone suggests this should explain everything. Places where official vehicles have historically been granted courtesy. The judge looks down at the file again, flipping through the citations carefully. Each one is documented with photos, timestamps, locations. His expression doesn't change, but anyone who knows him can see the wheels turning behind those thoughtful eyes. "These tickets were issued to a," he reads from the paper, "a 2023 Mercedes sedan. Is that your vehicle?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you were parking in these locations because—" He lets the question hang there, open-ended, inviting explanation rather than demanding defense. Victoria glances at her attorney, who gives her a slight nod. "Because I work as my father's chief of staff. I'm conducting official business in those buildings multiple times per week." The parking enforcement officers obviously didn't recognize the vehicle or understand that there's a protocol for family members of elected officials. Judge Caprio's eyebrows raise slightly, not in anger but in genuine curiosity. There's no edge to the question, but it lands in the courtroom with weight nonetheless. "For staff conducting state business," Victoria corrects, her voice growing firmer. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment as his daughter. I'm explaining that my work requires frequent access to these buildings, and the parking infrastructure around them is inadequate for the volume of official visitors. These citations represent a systematic failure to accommodate legitimate governmental functions." The judge leans back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him in that characteristic pose. He's quiet for a moment, just looking at her, and in that silence, something shifts in the room. The court officers exchange glances. The clerk's fingers pause over her keyboard. Even Mr. Pemberton, the high-priced attorney, seems to sense that this is going somewhere unexpected. "How old are you, Miss Ashford?" Judge Caprio asks finally, his voice still gentle. "I'm 26, Your Honor." 26. "And you work for your father?" "I work for his office, yes. I'm the chief of staff for his Providence operations." Judge Caprio nods slowly, taking this in. "Must be a good job." "It's a demanding job, Your Honor, which is why these parking citations have been such a significant disruption. I've been trying to handle this administratively, but the parking division has been completely unresponsive to my calls." "Unresponsive," the judge repeats, and there's something in the way he says it, not mocking, but gently questioning. "What happened when you called them?" Victoria's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "They told me the citations were valid and that I needed to either pay them or contest them in court. Which is absurd, given the circumstances." "Absurd," Judge Caprio says again, still in that same measured tone. He looks at the attorney. "Mr. Pemberton, you practice law here in Providence?" "I do, Your Honor." "For 32 years. 32 years. That's a long time. You've been in my courtroom before?" "A few times, Your Honor, though typically in Superior Court." The judge nods, understanding the implication this lawyer doesn't usually handle parking tickets. "And you're here today because—" Mr. Pemberton clears his throat. "Senator Ashford asked me to accompany his daughter, Your Honor, to help expedite this matter. As Miss Ashford has explained, these citations appear to stem from a misunderstanding about parking protocols for state officials." "State officials," Judge Caprio repeats, and now he looks back at Victoria. "Miss Ashford, are you a state official?" The question is simple, direct, and it lands like a stone in still water. Victoria's composure flickers for just a fraction of a second. "I work for a state official, Your Honor." "That's not what I asked." Still gentle, but persistent. "Are you yourself elected or appointed to a state position?" "No, Your Honor, but—" "So you're an employee?" "I'm the chief of staff." "An employee," Judge Caprio says again, not unkindly, just clarifying. "You work for your father's office. You receive a salary." Victoria's face is beginning to flush, a pink tint creeping up from her neck. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I don't see how my employment status is relevant to the fact that these citations were improperly issued." And there it is, the first crack in the polished facade, the first hint of something sharper beneath the professional veneer. Judge Caprio sees it, of course. He sees everything. But his expression remains patient, his voice stays soft. "Help me understand," he says, leaning forward slightly. "You say these were improperly issued. What makes them improper?" "Because I was conducting official business." "In a personal vehicle?" "It's the vehicle I use for work." "But it's registered to you personally." He's looking at the file again. "Not to the state, not to your father's office. To you. And you don't have any state-issued parking permits or placards." Victoria's attorney steps in. "Your Honor, if I might address the technical aspects." But Judge Caprio is still looking at Victoria, waiting for her answer, giving her the space to speak for herself. It's what he does, what he's always done. He doesn't let lawyers hide their clients behind legal jargon. He wants to hear from the person, understand their story, see their humanity. Victoria takes a breath, and when she speaks again, her voice has changed. There's an edge now, a frustration that's been building. "Your Honor, I've been dealing with this for months. I've tried to resolve it quietly, professionally, but the parking division has been completely unreasonable. These tickets are nothing more than revenue generation targeting people who are actually trying to serve the city. My father has given his entire career to public service, and this is how his staff is treated. The courtroom has gone very quiet. Even the usual background noise of shuffling papers and whispered conversations has ceased. Everyone is watching Judge Caprio's face, waiting to see how he'll respond to this declaration, this invocation of her father's service, this suggestion that she deserves different treatment. The judge is quiet for a long moment, his hands folded on the bench in front of him, his expression thoughtful but unreadable. Then he looks up at Victoria with those kind, penetrating eyes, and he says, very simply, tell me about your work. What do you do as chief of staff? The question seems to catch Victoria off guard. She was prepared for a legal battle, ready for confrontation, but this gentle inquiry into her actual work seems to disarm her slightly. She glances at her attorney again, but Judge Caprio is still waiting, patient as always, genuinely interested. I manage my father's Providence office operations, she begins, her voice still carrying that defensive edge. I coordinate scheduling, handle constituent services, manage staff, oversee community outreach initiatives. It's a complex operation with significant responsibilities. How many staff do you manage? Judge Caprio asks, and it's not a challenge, he's just gathering information, building a picture. 4 full-time employees and several part-time interns. And how long have you been doing this work? Almost 2 years. The judge nods slowly, processing this. Before that, what were you doing? There's a pause, just a fraction of a second, but it's there. I was finishing my graduate degree. In what field? Public policy. From Georgetown. Georgetown. Judge Caprio smiles slightly, warmly. That's a fine school. Your parents must be very proud. Thank you, Your Honor. Victoria's voice softens just a little, responding to his genuine warmth despite herself. And after Georgetown, you came back to Providence to work for your father? Yes. Was that always the plan? To work in his office? Another pause, longer this time. Victoria shifts her weight slightly, and for the first time, some of the rigid composure seems to waver. It was an opportunity that made sense at the time. Judge Caprio tilts his head slightly, that characteristic gesture that means he's hearing something beneath the words. At the time, he repeats. But maybe not what you'd originally planned. Victoria's mouth opens, then closes. She looks at her attorney, but Mr. Pemberton is watching the judge now, and something in his expression suggests he's beginning to understand that this is not going to be the quick procedural hearing he'd anticipated. Judge Caprio has a way of turning traffic court into therapy, parking tickets into personal excavation. Your Honor, Victoria says, trying to redirect, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not sure how my career path relates to these parking citations. Humor me, Judge Caprio says gently. I'm old, I'm curious, and I like to understand the people who come before me. What did you want to do? Before working for your father's office? There's a long silence. Victoria's jaw works slightly, and when she speaks, her voice is quieter, less certain. I wanted to work in international development. I had a fellowship offer in Geneva. Geneva, the judge repeats, and there's something knowing in his tone. Switzerland. That's far from Providence. Yes. But you didn't take it. No. Why not? Victoria's composure is cracking now, visible fault lines appearing in the polished surface. Her voice when she answers is tight, controlled but barely. My mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave. Stage 3. My father. He needed help. With her, with the office, with everything. So I came home. The courtroom shifts. It's a subtle thing, a collective intake of breath, a softening of postures. Judge Caprio's expression changes too, his eyes filling with that deep compassion that anyone who's ever watched him knows is genuine, unfeigned, real. "I'm sorry," he says, and the words carry weight because everyone knows he means them. "Your mother, how is she now?" Victoria's chin trembles slightly, and she lifts it higher, fighting for control. "She passed away 14 months ago." 14 months. Judge Caprio's voice is almost a whisper. "So recent. I'm so very sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Your Honor." He's quiet for a moment, just sitting with that grief, acknowledging it, giving it space. Then, very gently, "And you stayed. After she passed. You continued working for your father." "Yes." "That must be hard." "It's fine," Victoria says quickly, too quickly. "It's important work. My father needs me." Judge Caprio leans forward, his elbows on the bench, his hands clasped. "I'm sure he does. But what I'm asking is, how are you doing?" The question lands like a bomb in the courtroom. Victoria stares at him, and for the first time, her carefully constructed facade completely crumbles. Her eyes fill with tears that she blinks back furiously, her jaw clenching with the effort of maintaining control. "I'm fine," she says again, but her voice breaks on the word. "Miss Ashford," Judge Caprio says, his voice so gentle it's almost tender, "you don't look fine to me. You look exhausted. You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." "Your Honor," Mr. Pemberton tries to interject, perhaps sensing his client is about to fall apart, but the judge raises a hand. "Let her speak," he says quietly. Then, to Victoria, "These parking tickets. When did they start?" Victoria wipes at her eyes quickly, trying to regain composure. "About 8 months ago." 8 months. "And how many times have you been late paying them, ignoring them?" "I wasn't ignoring them," Victoria says, defensive again. "I was trying to get them resolved properly." "But you didn't pay them when they were issued." "No, because they were wrong. Or because you were overwhelmed," Judge Caprio suggests gently. "Because you were dealing with grief, with work, with trying to hold everything together." Victoria's face crumples. She presses her fingers to her mouth, fighting tears, and when she speaks, her voice is barely audible. I couldn't handle one more thing. Every day is meetings and constituent complaints and my father's schedule and everyone needing something, and I kept seeing these tickets and thinking I'd deal with them later, and then there were more, and I just..." "You couldn't," Judge Caprio finishes for her. "You were drowning." She nods, no longer trying to speak, tears now streaming down her face despite her efforts to stop them. Mr. Pemberton pulls a handkerchief from his pocket and hands it to her, his own expression troubled now, as if he's seeing his client clearly for the first time. Judge Caprio sits back in his chair, his expression thoughtful, sad, understanding. "You know," he says, his voice carrying to every corner of the quiet courtroom, "I've been doing this job for a long time. 40 years next month. And one thing I've learned is that parking tickets are almost never just about parking. They're about life. They're about what's happening to people when they can't quite keep all the balls in the air, when the weight gets too heavy, when they're just trying to survive." Victoria is crying openly now, no longer fighting it, her shoulders shaking with the release of months, maybe years of held tension and grief and exhaustion. "You lost your mother," Judge Caprio continues, his voice steady and warm. "You gave up your dreams to come home and help your family. You've been working yourself to the bone trying to be everything your father needs, trying to fill the space your mother left, trying to prove you're valuable, you're needed, you're enough. Am I right?" Victoria nods through her tears. "And somewhere in all of that, you stopped taking care of yourself. You stopped believing that your needs matter as much as everyone else's. You started thinking that parking tickets targeting you were somehow an attack on your father's service, because you've tied yourself so completely to his life that you can't see where he ends and you begin anymore." The words hang in the air, gentle but devastating in their accuracy. Victoria is openly sobbing now, and even Mr. Pemberton looks shaken, his professional detachment cracked by the raw emotion filling the courtroom. Your Honor, Victoria manages to say through her tears, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to. I know, Judge Caprio says softly. I know exactly what you were trying to do. You were trying to survive. You were trying to do right by your father, to honor your mother's memory, to be the daughter everyone needed you to be. But somewhere in all of that, you forgot to be yourself. Miss Ashford, he says, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Can you do that for me? Victoria nods, wiping her eyes with the handkerchief, struggling to regain some composure. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that had nothing to do with your father, nothing to do with his office, nothing to do with taking care of anyone else? The question seems to paralyze her. She stands there, staring at him, her mouth opening and closing, and it becomes clear to everyone watching that she can't answer because she genuinely doesn't know. Can't remember? Judge Caprio asks gently. Victoria swallows hard. I go to the gym sometimes. When? 5:30 in the morning, before work. And you're at work by what time? 7. 7 in the morning. And you leave when? It depends. Usually 7 or 8 at night. Sometimes later if there's an event. 7 in the morning to 8 at night, Judge Caprio repeats, and there's sadness in his voice. That's a 13-hour day. Every day. Not weekends. Usually. Usually. He shakes his head slowly. Miss Ashford, can I tell you something? I'm 81 years old. I've been working since I was 12. I've had my own businesses, I've practiced law, I've been a judge for 40 years. And even I don't work 13-hour days. You know why? She shakes her head. Because I learned a long time ago that you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself first. And right now, looking at you, I see someone whose cup isn't just empty, it's got holes in the bottom. Victoria laughs despite herself, a wet, broken sound that's half sob, half genuine amusement at his bluntness. You think I'm wrong? He asks, smiling slightly. No, Your Honor. You're right. I know I'm right. I'm old and Italian, we're always right. That gets another small laugh from her, and from several people in the courtroom. It's classic Caprio, using humor to diffuse tension, to create connection, to remind everyone that they're all human together. But here's what I want to know. These parking tickets, you said you were trying to resolve them administratively. What did that mean, exactly? Victoria takes a shaky breath. I called the parking division several times. I explained who I was, who my father was, and I asked them to review the citations because I believed they were issued in error. And what did they tell you? They said the tickets were valid. That there's no exemption for staff vehicles, even for state officials. They told me I could either pay or contest them in court. And how did that make you feel? She looks at him, surprised by the question. How did it make me feel? Yes. When they told you that you weren't special, that your father's position didn't exempt you from the rules everyone else follows, how did that make you feel? Victoria's face flushes again, but this time it's not just embarrassment or frustration. It's recognition, the look of someone seeing themselves clearly for the first time in a long time. Angry, she admits quietly. I felt angry. Like they weren't listening, like they didn't understand. Like they weren't giving you the respect you deserved. Yes. Judge Caprio nods slowly, not judgmentally, just understanding. And is it possible, he says carefully, that some of that anger wasn't really about the parking tickets at all? That maybe it was about everything else, the grief, the exhaustion, the feeling that you've given up everything and nobody sees it, nobody acknowledges it? Victoria's eyes fill with tears again. Maybe, she whispers. Maybe, Judge Caprio agrees gently. You know, when people are hurting, when they're overwhelmed, sometimes they find a target for all that pain. And sometimes that target is a parking ticket, or a clerk at the DMV, or a judge in traffic court. Not because those things are really the problem, but because they're safe. You can be angry at a parking ticket. It's harder to be angry at your father for needing you, or at your mother for dying, or at yourself for not being superhuman. The silence in the courtroom is profound. Victoria is crying again, but it's different now, not the desperate, fought tears of earlier, but something more released than anguish. Mr. Pemberton has his hand on her shoulder, his professional facade completely abandoned in favor of genuine human concern. Your Honor, Victoria says, her voice thick with emotion, I came in here today ready to fight. I thought I was being persecuted. I thought the parking officers were being unreasonable. I thought she stops, swallows. I thought I deserved special treatment because of who my father is. And that's wrong. That's everything I was raised not to believe, but somehow I convinced myself it was true. Because you're exhausted, Judge Caprio says simply. Because you're grieving. Because you've been running on empty for so long you can't tell up from down anymore. Yes. Miss Ashford, can I ask you something else? Of course. Does your father know you're here today? The question seems to catch her off guard. She glances at Mr. Pemberton, then back at the judge. He knows about the tickets. That's not what I asked. Does he know you're here, in this courtroom, right now? A pause. No. Why not? Because I told him I would handle it. I didn't want him to worry, to think I couldn't manage something this simple. This simple, Judge Caprio repeats, shaking his head. $1,500 in parking fines is not simple, Miss Ashford. But more than that, does your father know how you're doing? Really doing? Victoria looks down at her hands. We don't. We don't really talk about that kind of thing. About feelings? About anything that isn't work. Judge Caprio is quiet for a long moment, his expression sad, understanding, sympathetic. You lost your mother, he says finally. But in a way, you've lost your father too, haven't you? Because you can't just be his daughter anymore. You have to be his employee, his right hand, his replacement for the partner he lost. And somewhere in all of that, you've disappeared. Victoria nods, unable to speak. And these parking tickets, the judge continues, looking down at the file in front of him, they're not about parking at all. They're about a young woman who's drowning, who's crying out for help in the only way she knows how, by finally letting something slip, by finally not being perfect, by finally allowing herself to fail at something small so maybe someone will notice she's failing at something big. The tears are streaming down Victoria's face now, and she's not even trying to stop them. I can't do this anymore, she whispers. I can't keep pretending I'm okay. I can't keep working these hours and managing everyone else's emotions and being everything to everyone. I can't breathe. I know, Judge Caprio says, his voice full of compassion. I know, sweetheart. And you shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to carry what you've been carrying. Mr. Pemberton clears his throat. Your Honor, if I may, I think it's clear that my client has been under extraordinary stress. Perhaps we could discuss a payment plan for these fines, given the circumstances. In a minute, Judge Caprio says, still looking at Victoria. Right now, I want to make sure Miss Ashford understands something. Are you listening to me? Yes, Your Honor. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Do you understand that? Victoria nods. I want to hear you say it. I'm not required to set myself on fire to keep other people warm, she repeats, her voice shaky but stronger. That's right. Your father is a grown man. A state senator. He has resources, he has staff, he has options. You are not the only person who can help him. You are not responsible for his grief, or his career, or filling the hole your mother left. You're only responsible for you. But he needs me. He needs you healthy, Judge Caprio interrupts gently but firmly. He needs you whole. He needs you alive and functioning and not burning yourself down to ash trying to be someone you're not. And if he doesn't understand that, then you need to help him understand it. Because right now, what you're doing isn't sustainable. You know that, right? Victoria nods again, tears still falling. Good. Because I'm about to make a ruling here, and I need you to really hear what I'm saying. Judge Caprio reaches for a tissue box that sits on the corner of his bench. He keeps it there for moments exactly like this and hands it across to Victoria. She takes several tissues, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself enough to speak. Thank you, she manages to say, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you so much, Your Honor. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he tells her gently. Just take care of yourself. That's all I want. But before he can continue, the courtroom door opens and Mr. Pemberton steps back inside, looking concerned. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but Senator Ashford is here. He's asking to speak with you. Judge Caprio's eyebrows rise slightly. Senator Ashford is here? Yes, Your Honor. He just arrived. He said he was concerned about how long the hearing was taking. Victoria's face goes pale. Oh God. He wasn't supposed to. I told him I would handle this. It's okay, Judge Caprio says calmly. It's fine. Send him in. Victoria looks panicked. Your Honor, please, I don't want him to see me like this. Victoria, the judge says, his voice firm but kind, this is exactly what we were just talking about. You can't keep hiding from him. You can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is an opportunity. Take it. Before Victoria can respond, the door opens again and Senator Richard Ashford strides into the courtroom. He's a tall man in his early 60s, silver-haired and distinguished in a charcoal suit that speaks of power and position. His face carries the practiced expression of a career politician, concerned but composed, authoritative but approachable. But when he sees his daughter standing at the podium with her tear-stained face and crumpled tissues, something in his expression cracks. Victoria? He moves toward her immediately. What's going on? Are you all right? Judge Caprio's voice cuts through the moment. Senator Ashford, welcome to my courtroom. Please step forward. The senator stops, seeming to remember where he is, and approaches the bench with Victoria. Up close, the judge can see the worry in his eyes, the genuine fear that something terrible has happened to his daughter. Your Honor, the senator begins, his political training kicking in, I apologize for interrupting your proceedings. I was simply concerned about my daughter. As you should be, Judge Caprio says, and there's something in his tone that makes the senator pause. She's been going through quite a lot. The parking tickets, yes, I'm aware. It's a ridiculous situation that never should have escalated to this point. I've spoken with the parking division director. I'm not talking about the parking tickets, the judge interrupts gently. I'm talking about your daughter. When was the last time you really looked at her, Senator? Richard Ashford blinks, caught off guard by the question. I'm sorry. Your daughter. When was the last time you really looked at her? Asked her how she was doing. Not how the office was running, not about schedules or meetings, but how she, Victoria, the person, was doing. The senator glances at Victoria, confusion crossing his face. I don't understand what you're asking, Your Honor. Then let me be more direct. Judge Caprio leans forward, his expression serious but not unkind. Do you know that your daughter turned down a fellowship in Geneva to come home and work for you? Of course. She told me about the offer, but she decided she wanted to work in Rhode Island instead. She decided, the judge interrupts, to come home because her mother was dying and she thought you needed her. There's a difference. The senator's face changes, the political mask slipping to reveal something more vulnerable beneath. That was a difficult time. For all of us. It was. And it still is, isn't it? Except you've been dealing with your grief by burying yourself in work, and Victoria has been dealing with hers by trying to become her mother, trying to fill the space she left, trying to be everything you need, working 13-hour days and never taking time for herself. 13 hours. Richard looks at his daughter, really looks at her for the first time, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she's carrying. Victoria, is that true? Victoria can't meet his eyes. She stares at the floor, her hands gripping the tissues so tightly they're tearing apart in her fingers. I just wanted to help, she whispers. Help, Judge Caprio says quietly. Senator, your daughter has been drowning trying to help you. She's accumulated $1,500 in parking fines because she's been so overwhelmed, so exhausted, that she couldn't even manage to deal with parking tickets. Does that sound like someone who's okay to you? The senator's face has gone pale. He reaches out to touch Victoria's shoulder, but she flinches slightly, an involuntary movement that makes him pull his hand back as if burned. Victoria, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? Because you needed me, Victoria says, her voice breaking. Because Mom was gone and someone had to keep everything running, keep everything normal, and I thought if I could just work hard enough, be good enough, then maybe. She stops, unable to continue. Maybe what? Her father asks, and his voice is thick with emotion now, the politician completely gone, replaced by a father who's just realized he's been failing his daughter. Maybe you wouldn't miss her so much, Victoria whispers. Maybe if I could be what you needed, do what she did, then you wouldn't be so sad all the time. The silence that follows is profound. Richard Ashford stands frozen, staring at his daughter, and the expression on his face is one of absolute devastation. When he speaks, his voice is barely audible. Oh, Victoria. Oh, sweetheart, no. Judge Caprio watches this unfold with the patience of someone who's witnessed thousands of human moments, painful and beautiful and real. He gives them space, lets the silence stretch, allows the truth to settle between them. Finally, the senator speaks again, his voice stronger now, more determined. Your Honor, I need to know. What's the ruling on these tickets? How much does she owe? I've dismissed them, Judge Caprio says simply. You've. Richard looks stunned. All of them? All of them. Your daughter doesn't owe anything. But why? I mean, I appreciate the consideration, but on what grounds? On the grounds, Judge Caprio says, his voice taking on an edge now, gentle but firm, that your daughter has already paid more than enough. On the grounds that sometimes mercy is more important than the letter of the law. On the grounds that she needed someone to see her struggling and offer her a hand instead of a bill. The senator nods slowly, processing this. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm grateful for your compassion. Don't thank me yet, the judge says. Because I gave Victoria a condition for dismissing these tickets, and now I'm giving you one too. A condition? Yes. I want you to give your daughter a leave of absence. Paid. 4 weeks, minimum. Starting immediately. Richard Ashford's eyes widen. Your Honor, with all respect, I don't think the court has jurisdiction to dictate employment decisions. You're absolutely right, Judge Caprio says calmly. I have no legal authority to make you do anything regarding your office. But I'm asking you, man to man, father to father, to look at your daughter and tell me she doesn't need a break. Tell me she doesn't need time to breathe, to grieve, to figure out who she is outside of being your employee. Can you honestly tell me that? The senator looks at Victoria, really looks at her, at the dark circles under her eyes, The way her shoulders are hunched with exhaustion, the trembling in her hands. He sees, perhaps for the first time in 2 years, not his chief of staff but his daughter, the little girl who used to climb into his lap with picture books, the teenager who argued politics with him at the dinner table, the young woman who gave up her dreams because she thought he needed her more than she needed them. "No," he says quietly. "No, I can't tell you that." "Then you know what you need to do." Richard Ashford takes a deep breath and turns fully to face his daughter. "Victoria, I'm so sorry. I've been so wrapped up in my own grief, my own work, that I couldn't see what I was doing to you. Your mother would be furious with me right now. She'd tell me I was being an idiot, that I was taking advantage of your kindness, your loyalty." His voice cracks. "She'd be right." "Dad," Victoria starts, but he holds up a hand. "Let me finish. I want you to take a leave of absence. Not 4 weeks, 8 weeks. 2 months. And I don't want you checking email or taking calls or worrying about the office. I want you to rest. To travel if you want. To figure out what you want to do with your life that has nothing to do with me or my career. Can you do that?" Victoria stares at him, shock and hope and fear all warring in her expression. "But the office, who will?" "I'll figure it out," Richard says firmly. "I'm a United States Senator. I have resources. I'll hire temporary staff, I'll redistribute responsibilities, I'll manage. The point is, it's not your problem. You've been solving my problems for 2 years. Now it's time for me to solve yours." "I don't have problems," Victoria protests weakly, and both her father and Judge Caprio smile sadly at the instinctive denial. "Yes, you do," Richard says gently. "And the biggest one is me. I've been asking too much of you, taking advantage of your love and your guilt and your grief. That stops now." Judge Caprio watches this exchange with satisfaction, the kind of deep contentment that comes from knowing he's made a real difference, not just in a case but in people's lives. This is why he does this job, why he's been sitting on this bench for 40 years for moments like this, when mercy and wisdom can create real change. "Senator," the judge says, "there's one more thing." "Yes, Your Honor. I want you to go to therapy. Both of you. Together and separately. You've both been carrying grief that you haven't properly processed, and it's poisoning your relationship, your health, your lives. Will you do that?" Richard nods immediately. "Yes. Absolutely." "Victoria?" She nods too, tears streaming down her face again. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Judge Caprio picks up his gavel, preparing to close the case, but then he pauses. "Actually, one more thing. Senator, you came in here ready to use your position, your influence, to get these tickets dismissed for your daughter. You called the parking division director. You brought in an expensive attorney. You were prepared to leverage your power to get special treatment. Do you understand why that's a problem?" The senator has the grace to look ashamed. "Yes, Your Honor. I do." "Tell me why." Richard takes a breath. "Because it sends the message that some people are above the rules. That power and privilege entitle you to different treatment. It's everything I've supposedly spent my career fighting against." "That's right," Judge Caprio says. "And here's the thing, I didn't dismiss these tickets because of who you are. I dismissed them because of who your daughter is, what she's been through, and what she needs. If she had walked in here arrogant and entitled, demanding special treatment, I would have thrown the book at her. But she didn't. She came in defensive and angry, yes, but underneath all of that was a young woman in pain, drowning in responsibility and grief. That's who I saw. That's who I helped. Not a senator's daughter. Just a daughter." "I understand, Your Honor," Richard says quietly. "And I'm grateful." "Don't be grateful to me. Be better for her. That's what I want." Judge Caprio picks up his gavel and taps it gently against the bench, the sound marking the official conclusion of the hearing. But he doesn't dismiss them immediately. Instead, he sets the gavel down and folds his hands in front of him, looking at both Victoria and her father with that expression of paternal wisdom that has made him beloved by millions who've watched his courtroom over the years. "Before you go," he says, "I want to tell you both something. Will you indulge an old judge for a few more minutes?" "Of course, Your Honor," Victoria says, and her father nods in agreement. "When I was a young man," Judge Caprio begins, his voice taking on the quality of someone sharing a story that matters, "I worked in my father's grocery store. Every day after school, weekends, summers. I worked hard because I loved my father and I wanted to help him. He was an immigrant, he struggled, and I thought if I just worked hard enough, I could make his life easier, make him proud." He pauses, his eyes distant with memory. "One day, I was about 17, I was exhausted. I'd been at school all day, I'd had football practice, and I came to work at the store and I couldn't do it anymore. I sat down on a crate of canned goods in the back room and I started crying. Just overwhelmed, exhausted, done." Victoria is listening intently now, seeing herself in this story. "My father found me there," the judge continues. "And you know what he did? He sat down next to me on another crate, and he said, 'Franco, why are you crying?' And I told him I was just tired. And he said something I've never forgotten. He said, 'Franco, I don't want your tiredness. I don't want your sacrifice. I want your joy. I want you to have a life that makes you happy, not one that makes you exhausted. If working in this store is stealing your joy, then you need to stop.'" Judge Caprio's voice is thick with emotion now. "I tried to argue with him. I said he needed me. And he said, 'I need you healthy and happy more than I need you here.' A father who takes his son's joy is no father at all. And that was the last day I worked in that store. He made me quit. He practically pushed me out the door and told me to go be a kid, go live my life." He looks directly at Senator Ashford now. "Your daughter has been giving you her tiredness, her sacrifice, her youth. And you've been taking it because it's easier than dealing with your grief, easier than facing the fact that your wife is gone and your life has changed. But a father who takes his daughter's joy is no father at all." Richard Ashford's face is wet with tears. "You're right. You're absolutely right." "I know I am," Judge Caprio says, not unkindly. "And here's what else I know. Your wife Victoria's mother, she wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want her daughter sacrificing her dreams, working herself to death, trying to be someone else. She'd want Victoria to be Victoria. To live her own life. To find her own joy. Am I right?" Victoria nods, crying openly. "That's exactly what she would have said. She always told me to go out and conquer the world. To not let anything hold me back." "Then that's what you need to do," the judge says firmly. "Not for me, not for some court order, but for her. For your mother's memory. Honor her by living the life she wanted you to have." "I will," Victoria whispers. "I promise." Judge Caprio turns his attention back to the senator. "And you, sir. You've built a career on public service. You've fought for working families, for fair treatment, for justice. But you've been teaching your daughter that none of those values apply to her, that she should use your position to get special treatment, that her problems are beneath the rules everyone else has to follow. What kind of lesson is that?" "A terrible one," Richard admits. "I was wrong. I was trying to protect her, but I was really just teaching her the worst possible lessons about power and privilege." "Exactly. And here's what I want you to remember: the greatest service you can provide isn't in a legislative chamber. It's in your own home, with your own daughter. If you can't serve her well, if you can't see her and support her and help her thrive, then what good is all the rest of it?" The senator nods, accepting the rebuke with humility. You're right, Your Honor. Thank you for the wake-up call. Don't thank me. Just do better. Judge Caprio picks up the case file and makes a notation, then looks back at them with a slight smile. Now, I'm officially dismissing all charges in this case. Victoria Ashford, you owe nothing. The parking tickets are erased. This case is closed. Thank you, Your Honor, Victoria says, her voice full of genuine gratitude. But remember our deal. You talk to your father, really talk to him. You take that leave of absence. You figure out what you want from life. And you stop setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Understood? Understood. Good. Senator, you make sure she actually takes that time off. No calling her, no emergencies that only she can handle, no guilt trips. You let her breathe. Can you do that? I can, Your Honor. I will. Judge Caprio nods, satisfied. Then we're done here. Mr. Pemberton, you can go ahead and bill the senator for your time today, though I suspect this wasn't quite the hearing you were expecting. The attorney, who's been standing quietly to the side during this entire exchange, smiles. No, Your Honor, it wasn't. But it was the one they needed. Sometimes that's how it works, the judge says. Then, to Victoria and her father, go on. Get out of here. Go have lunch together. Talk. Really talk. About your mother, about your lives, about what comes next. Don't talk about work. Don't talk about the office. Just be a father and daughter for a few hours. Can you do that? Richard puts his arm around Victoria's shoulders, and this time she doesn't flinch. She leans into him instead, letting herself be held, letting herself be his daughter instead of his employee. We can do that, the senator says. Good. Now go. I've got other cases to hear. As they turn to leave, Victoria pauses and looks back at the judge. Your Honor. Yes. What happened to you? After your father made you quit the grocery store? Judge Caprio smiles, a warm, genuine expression that lights up his entire face. I went to college. Then law school. I started my own practice, got into politics, became a judge. I built a life that made me happy. And every day, I was grateful to my father for loving me enough to let me go, to push me out of the nest even when it was hard for him, even when he could have used my help. He gave me the greatest gift a parent can give a child: permission to live my own life. Victoria smiles through her tears. Thank you for giving me that same gift today. You're welcome, sweetheart. Now go. Live your life. Make your mother proud. Victoria and her father walk out of the courtroom together, his arms still around her shoulders, both of them crying but also somehow lighter, as if a weight they didn't even know they were carrying has been lifted. Mr. Pemberton follows them out, shaking his head with a small smile on his face, recognizing that he's just witnessed something special. When they're gone, Judge Caprio sits back in his chair and takes a deep breath. The courtroom is quiet for a moment, the other staff and defendants who've been watching this unfold processing what they've just seen. Then the clerk speaks up quietly. That was beautiful, Judge. It was necessary, he says simply. That young woman was dying in front of her father and neither of them could see it. Sometimes people need someone outside the situation to hold up a mirror and make them look. You think she'll really take the time off? Really make changes? Judge Caprio considers this, then nods. I think so. I saw something in her eyes at the end there, hope. She remembered what it felt like to want something for herself. Once you remember that, it's hard to forget again. And if she doesn't? If she goes back to the same patterns? Then she'll end up back here eventually, or in a hospital, or worse. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think her father saw it too, saw what he was doing to her. And I think he loves her enough to change. He pauses, then adds, at least, I hope so. The clerk nods and returns to her computer. Judge Caprio looks down at his docket, at the list of other cases still to be heard today. Parking tickets, traffic violations, city ordinance complaints, the mundane machinery of municipal court that most people see as just bureaucracy and fines. But he knows better. He's always known better. Every case that comes before him is a story, a human life intersecting with the law at a moment of stress or struggle or crisis. Every defendant is someone's child, someone's parent, someone who matters. And his job isn't just to enforce the rules, it's to see the people behind the violations, to understand their circumstances, to dispense not just justice but mercy when mercy is what's needed. Next case, he calls out, and another person approaches the bench, another story begins to unfold. But for a moment, before he looks at the new file in front of him, Judge Frank Caprio allows himself a small smile. Because today, in this case, he didn't just dismiss some parking tickets. He maybe saved a young woman's life. He definitely saved a father-daughter relationship. He reminded everyone in that courtroom that power and privilege don't entitle you to special treatment, but that compassion and understanding should be available to everyone, regardless of who they are or who their parents are. This is why he does this job. Not for the prestige or the authority, but for moments like this, moments when the law becomes a tool for healing instead of just punishment, when a courtroom becomes a place of transformation instead of just judgment. He's 81 years old. He's been sitting on this bench for 40 years. And he's still learning, still growing, still finding new ways to use his position to make people's lives better. That's the real power of the law, he thinks. Not in its ability to punish, but in its ability to see people clearly, to understand their struggles, and to offer them a path forward. Victoria Ashford came into his courtroom today angry and defensive, armed with privilege and prepared for battle. She left as just Victoria, a young woman in pain who'd been seen, heard, and helped. And somewhere out there, maybe she'll remember this day when she's facing another crossroads, another moment of decision. Maybe she'll hear his voice asking her what makes her happy, what brings her joy. Maybe she'll choose herself instead of obligation. And if she does, then these dismissed parking tickets will turn out to be the best $1,500 never collected in the history of Providence Municipal Court. Judge Caprio looks at the new defendant standing before him, a middle-aged man in work clothes looking nervous and tired, and he smiles that warm, welcoming smile that has become his trademark. "Good morning," he says gently. "Please, tell me your name and what brings you here today." And the work continues. The stories continue. The humanity continues. Because that's what this courtroom is really about. Not parking tickets or traffic violations or city ordinances. It's about seeing people, understanding them, and helping them find their way through the complicated, difficult, beautiful business of being human. One case at a time. One person at a time. One moment of mercy at a time. That's justice according to Frank Caprio. And in his courtroom in Providence, Rhode Island, that's the only kind that matters.